report has issued some urgent safety advice to First Group and Transport for London, measures which they hope will reduce the risk of trams approaching that sharp bend with such excessive speed. So they're suggesting further speed restrictions and also additional warning signs for drivers. Well, to talk a little bit more about the report that was out today, I'm joined now by Trevor, a lawyer who will be representing some of the people who were injured in this tram crash. Trevor, thanks for joining us. What are your initial reactions to the report out this afternoon?
Well, the initial reaction is that it's, first of all, pleasing that the report has come out so speedily. I guess it's a little bit disappointing that the report is as brief as it is, but one has to understand the reasons why. It is important that we can move to a point of closure as quickly as possible for the bereaved families, and our thoughts are very much with them, and for those that suffered life-changing injuries. And I think this report represents the start of that.
Do you think the recommendations go far enough at this stage? Obviously, as you said, it's brief, but what do you make of the recommendations?
Well, it's difficult to comment too much on the recommendations because, of course, what we know from the report is in relation to the actual tram system and the tram itself. We don't know anything about the driver behaviour, and I suspect that there ought to be some recommendations around that potentially anyway. But what we can say is that some of the recommendations are perhaps common sense. I'm perhaps a little bit surprised that some of the recommendations weren't in place anyway. By way of example, the signage, I think, was only 30 metres in front of the bend in terms of the speed restriction. I would have thought that should have been further down the track, and I think that the speed restriction itself at 12 miles per hour should have applied further down the track. So both signage and the speed restriction, those recommendations we support, but I'm a little surprised they weren't in place beforehand.
You'll be representing a couple of people who were injured in this crash. What can they expect in terms of compensation for this?
Well, at the moment the priority is to understand what happened and why it happened, and what they expect is to get some answers around that, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. Their second expectation is for this to happen as quickly as possible, and that's certainly important for the bereaved families, and it's important for those with life-changing injuries. As far as compensation is concerned, it's way too early to tell. Many have suffered losses, fatalities. Others have suffered life-changing injuries. What I would say is that it is important that there be an acceptance and a welcome given to the Transport for London for making the announcement today to support the bereaved families with free funeral expenses. I'd like that to go a little bit further. I'd like there to be a rehabilitation fund set up to support those with life-changing injuries.
So, as well as monetary compensation, they're hoping for psychological support as well. Obviously, a huge trauma for many people.
Well, compensation is about helping people to rebuild their lives. It is about ensuring that the significant cost that arises from this type of trauma is met, and frankly, it is also about making sure that those who are at fault, and I'm not implicating any particular party here, but that they make a contribution to the health and treatment costs of those injured people rather than the taxpayer. So I think compensation is very important, but right now it's about getting answers, learning lessons, and supporting the bereaved families and those with serious injuries.
And just finally, how long can we expect this process to go on? Is this something that they will see in the next months or years, or is it impossible to say?
It's difficult to say because there are a number of parallel investigations. We've got the Transport Police carrying out an investigation, the Road Accident Investigation Branch. There will be inquests as well. So those investigations will all be carried out in tandem, and it very much depends, I suppose, on how quickly the British Transport can carry out their investigations in relation to culpability. Insofar as civil claims are concerned, well, it depends on how quickly we can assess the extent of the injury and harm caused to the victims of this accident.
Trevor, thank you very much for joining us this evening here, where there are thousands of floral tributes and more people